Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on the program today, I'm ranking the Texans UDFAs. Which guys are the most likely to make this 53-man roster? It actually surprised you. I think there are two guys that the Texans signed as UDFAs that could end up making the final 53-man roster. I know, call me crazy, but I love store-bought pesto. More on Jake Andrews. Going to be talking about the guy the Texans claimed off of waivers, and we'll be talking about the AFC South and that competition. But today's the last day of the month, and I know it's a tall task. I know it's a hard feat, but I want to get to 30K subs on this video. So if you could, y'all have been absolute rock stars hitting that subscribe button down there. It's 100% free. I'm 493 away. I'd really like to just shove it to my bosses and be able to hit 30K by the end of this month. If you'd like to help me do that, go down and hit that subscribe button. It's 100% free. You get daily content, and I can absolutely double reverse dunk on my bosses. Shout out to you, Brett and James. Let's get into today's show. First up, ranking from least to most likely to make the Texans roster. We're talking the UDFAs. And this first one might surprise a lot of people. And close your eyes, Nick Roloff, if you're listening, our resident North Carolina fan here at Chat Sports. But Elijah Huzzie, what did you just call me, is going to be the last on this list of UDFAs to make the Texans roster. And I'll tell you why. If it wasn't for his injury, which he sustained in the Shrine Bowl in the pre-draft process, I think Huzzie actually might have been drafted by the Texans or another team in the 6th or 7th round. But he got injured. He won't be ready for probably the start, if not halfway through the regular season. So I don't think there's any possible way the Texans have a injured man that they signed as a UDFA on the final 53-man roster. I don't think he has any shot of that. But in good news, I think Huzzie has the best chance to eventually be on the practice squad and get called up on the Texans roster at some point during the season on a game day. Look out for Huzzie to be one of those guys that they stash on the practice squad and try to bring up later. Next, let's go to Daniel Jackson from Minnesota, teammates with Ariante Ursery. I don't think he's likely to make the roster either because the Texans wide receiver room all of a sudden got very heated with who's going to make the final slots, right? You have Jalen Knoll, you have Jaden Higgins, Christian Kirk, Nico Collins. Those are your top four. Those are your four guys who are locks to make this roster. Past them, you have Mechie, Hutchinson, Justin Watson, Braxton Berrios, amongst others who are vying for those last spots. You also have Tank Dell, but he'll probably be on IR this season with his injury. I don't think there's really any way, unless he absolutely just shows up everybody else at practice, that a wide receiver will make this team. But Daniel Jackson will get the opportunity during OTAs in the preseason. Next up, KC Ossai, which actually producer Coop might recognize this name a little bit. His brother played for the University of Texas, and I absolutely butchered it last time. The Raging Cajuns, not from Louisiana Monroe, Louisiana Lafayette. I got that wrong last time. Got roasted in the comments section. KC Ossai, though, I think, has a okay chance, but, the Texans, their linebacking room, I think, is solid. And I was going to say, maybe as a special teamer. But they kind of signed a specialty guy just for that in Nick Neiman during free agency. I don't really see any room for another linebacker in this room. Let's talk about Coop's favorite player, Mr. Cox. I think he has a decent chance to make the squad as well, but with them claiming Jake Andrews, who we'll talk about later on in the show, I do think that makes it a little bit harder for my man Cox to get on the field. He's going to fight for a spot, but as a center guard combo coming from Kentucky, I think he's going to have a difficult road to make the final 53-man roster come roster cutdown day with guys like Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, who've already been on this squad, and then you add like a couple guys that you got in this offseason. I think it's going to be hard for him to make this team. Now, somebody who was one of the later signings as a UDFA, Junior Tafuna, who actually is one of the guys who's getting the most out of all the UDFAs in their contracts, a defensive tackle from Utah. Yes, the numbers don't jump off the page, but I actually think he has a decent chance to make this roster if the Texans don't sign another nose tackle. He is not a flashy guy, but an absolute tree stump in the middle of the defensive line. He's not going to move. He's got a great base. He's going to be able to help in the run game. Posted, I believe, an 80 PFF run grade in 2024, so was really good in that aspect. I think he has a decent chance to make the roster, but the number one UDFA with a chance to make the roster, Austin Brinkman. Now, for the first time since 2009, the Texans will not have a guy named John Weeks long snapping the ball. So it's going to be an open competition. And Brinkman's going to have his shot. The kid from West Virginia, the long snapper, he's going to have a legitimate opportunity to make this Texans final 53-man roster. That's why I think he is the most likely UDFA to make this team, simply because the Texans need a long snapper, and I think it's him versus one other guy. Your odds are pretty good there if it's you and one other dude who are vying for one position rather than a guy like Tafuna or Cox or any of those other guys. I think they're going to have a much harder time because there's just so much more competition. Brinkman has a pretty good, kind of road to make this final 53. I want to ask you, though, do you think any of these UDFAs make the roster? Am I totally wrong in my rankings? Let me know down in the comments section. Was I sleeping on these guys? Let me know down below what you guys think. Do you think any of these UDFAs end up making the roster? All right, next up, let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into Jake Andrews. Not David Andrews, which I saw some Texans content creators tweeting yesterday about David Andrews. I can't believe anybody would make that mistake. What idiots. But it's Jake Andrews from the New England Patriots, not David Andrews. And the Texans are getting somebody who didn't play last year in 2024 due to an injury that he sustained in the preseason and OTAs. And he is somebody that, has a lot of ties with this Texans team. And I really do believe that Jake Andrews is going to have a shot to at least make this Texans 53-man roster. I think he's going to have an opportunity, and I'll tell you why in just a moment, why I think he has a little bit of an inside track to get there. But I did want to go back a little bit to tell you a little bit more about Jake Andrews. I looked at his draft notes in 2023 from Lance Zierlein, and this is what he had to say about Andrews coming out in the draft. Andrews might lack length and be viewed as only a center at the next level, but he plays with strong hands, a wide frame, and exceptional strength at the point of attack. His inability to trigger his feet quickly and make fluid redirections in space show up in run blocking and pass protection, but his ability to square up and hold his own against a true nose tackle over the top of him is a valuable talent. Players with Andrews' thickness and drive blocking talent tend to find their way onto rosters and often end up sticking around. Now, a little bit of profile about Jake Andrews. He played under Cole Popovich, our current offensive line coach at Troy. He was playing with him there. He played center and right guard, and like I said, an injury kept him out all of 2024. So, I mean, the Texans, we were all clamoring for them to add, multiple guys in the offensive line. I even said myself, I wanted the Texans to double dip in this draft. They went double dipping in receiver instead of offensive line. So maybe they feel more comfortable with some of the additions they've had this offseason, like a Jake Andrews, an Ed Ingram, Laken Tomlinson, Cam Robinson, just to name a few. But I think this highlights a bigger question and point to this team. Are connections hurting this squad, hurting this team? Because it's no secret the Texans front office values relationships. They value it a ton. But does it get to a point where those relationships are kind of blinding them to the truth? Now, kudos to this front office, kudos to this coaching staff for moving on from Bobby Slowick, because I know that was a hard thing to do. It was one of DeMeco Ryans' friends. But even with the hiring of Nick Caley, right? They went from Bobby Slowick, who they had a lot of connections with, and they kind of, stayed in their comfort zone. They hired Nick Caley, who they also have a ton of connections with. Nick Caserio worked with him in New England, and he worked with Sean McVay, who is part of that, kind of coaching tree on the West Coast with him and Kyle Shanahan. DeMeco Ryans is buddy-buddy with all those guys. So the connections are there, and we've seen it before. I know personally that the Texans keep guys on their practice squad, that they keep guys on the lower levels of, this roster, due to relationships, due to the fact that they have a certain agent, or, they worked with somebody on the coaching staff, or they know somebody in the front office. This team values those relationships and values keeping guys around that they are comfortable with. And that might be part of the problem moving forward, right? You have to get out of your comfort zone a little bit. I'm not saying it's a major issue or something that all Texans fans need to be up in arms about, but it is something we have to consider. And we have to look at whenever the Texans have these decisions, especially when it gets down to roster cutdown day, whether or not certain guys make the roster. Is it because they're truly more talented than the other guys? Or is it because of their relationships with the coaching staff or the front office? We'll get into our last topic on today's show in just a moment, but quick shout out to our friends over at Fanatics. If you're trying to get a new Texans jersey, go ahead and go to chatsports.com/Texans jerseys. You can get the CJ Stroud in the battle red. They have Jalen Pitre, all the jerseys you need, all different shapes and sizes over there at Fanatics. One more time, if you use this link, chatsports.com/Texans jerseys, it sends you straight to the Fanatics website, and it lets them know that we sent you over there. So if you could, go check it out in the comments and description of today's video, chatsports.com/Texans jerseys. All right, lastly, I want to just talk about these three teams, right? The biggest threats to the Texans from going three-peat, back-to-back-to-back as AFC South champs, the Titans, the Jags, and the Colts. Because I think the Texans, fortunately for us Texans fans, still have the easiest path to the playoffs of any single team in the NFL going into 2025. Now, I'm not saying it's a lock and the Texans are 100% going to make the playoffs, but compared to, look at the AFC North with the Bengals, the Ravens, the Steelers. Look at the AFC West with the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos. These divisions are much tougher than the Texans division right now with the Titans, Jags, and Colts. And I think this question all boils down to one simple answer of who you think is the best quarterback out of these three guys right here. Cam Ward, Trevor Lawrence, and Coop, you're going to laugh. I almost put Daniel Jones down here. I don't know if the Colts are going with Anthony Richardson. I don't know if they're going with Daniel Jones. But it might give you a little leg to have it to where it's a two-man race between Cam Ward and Trevor Lawrence. But let me know down in the comment section who you think is going to have the best year out of these three guys in 2025. Go down and let me know, because I think it might be Trevor Lawrence. I really do. I like what the Jags have done and kind of like building around him a little bit. The Travis Hunter pick, it better work out, because if it doesn't, they are absolutely screwed because they don't have their first-round pick going into next year. I would lean Lawrence, but my gut is telling me Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward, there's a reason he went number 1 overall in this year's draft, and I like kind of some of the other pieces that they have around him. A Calvin Ridley, they got a really good sleeper in Alec Manor late in the draft. I think the Titans could be a sleeper for this division, and I think they could be the team that challenges the Texans most in 2025. Now, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs for the latest Texans news and rumors all year long. And if you made it to the end of the video and you're not subbed, what are we doing? What are we doing? Go hit that subscribe button for free Texans content all year long. Your one-stop shop for all the latest Texans news and rumors.